And it is time for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now, the Fitz-Gerald Group's principal, Keith Fitz-Gerald, and Holis Wealth Management President, David Nicholas. Great to see you, gentlemen. Thanks so much for being here. Keith, let's talk about this wild ride in growth, really getting smashed, including crypto. The crypto market down better than 70% since its November highs. Ouch. Bitcoin this morning is also taking a hit again, now at 20,051. You say crypto is having a Lehman Brothers moment. What do you mean?
Well, it is having a Lehman Brothers moment. And what I mean by that, Maria, is that we're getting the bad actors bled out of the system. People who thought that this was a riskless asset are finding out the hard way that it isn't. But, you know, here's the thing, is when you get a moment like that in the market, you typically have a lot of innovation. And I don't mean the creative kind. What I mean is the regulatory kind. The bad actors are getting bled out of the system. In fact, this could be the moment where we acquire stability rather than somebody riding off into the sunset with taxpayer dollars packed in their saddlebags.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it in an environment where things are really slowing down. Do you expect that we are in recession already, Keith? We've got the GDP coming out this morning. We're expecting to show what we've seen so far for the first quarter, and that's a contraction.
I am. I believe we have been in a recession for several months. I think the data that we're going to receive today, despite the fact that it's widely paid attention to, is like betting on a horse race after you know the results. Consumers are getting hammered by gasoline prices specifically. Companies are getting hammered all over the place. To Dan's point, consumer spending is really going to start to trickle into the socially facing media companies. This is the time where you keep it on the fairway, where you don't take big chances. But to David's point, you buy the stuff that matters, that can benefit. Banks among them. My favorite is J.P. Morgan, for example.
Well, Lou, the Atlanta Federal Reserve had an expectation of 0.0% growth for the second quarter. What do you think? I mean, if we get a contraction in the second quarter, then we know we are, in fact, officially in recession.
Zero's not good, right? No, look, I think it's going to come negative. You look at the first quarter print, right? We had expectations for, I think, 1% growth. It came in at negative 1.5%. The revisions and expectations are already coming down for Q2. They started out at 4.2%. Now they're down to, I think, 2.3%. It's going to be negative. And to Keith's point, I agree. There's very few people talking about it. Adam agrees. We're in a recession right now. It's not a matter of if, it's how long.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing the signs, the indicators. You know, inflation looks like it's peaked in a lot of core inputs, shipping costs, semiconductor costs, fertilizer costs. It's how quickly can we get out of this?
And I think the sentiment is really worth noting here. Lee, you brought this up earlier. You saw that Michigan sentiment number last week, Adam. What? Down 14.5% or so.
50-year low.
Holy moly.
I mean, think how bad we feel right now. Worse than 08, worse than the tech crash. I mean, as long as I've been in this business, I've never seen sentiment so negative. The lowest number of bulls in the stock market in 30 years. But, you know, I will say to this point about recession, and, you know, we're in agreement here, I think, that we are technically in a recession. It's a shallow recession because what has pushed GDP into the negative territory is inventory adjustments and net exports. That has to do with supply side stuff. We're at full employment. So, again, that's the irony of this moment. As awful as we feel, we're still at full employment. Earnings actually just last quarter were a record high. So it may technically be a recession, but I think it's a shallow one, and we will get through it.
Well, sentiment dictates behavior, Lee. When you see all these headlines about recession, that we're cutting into our savings account, you start changing your own behavior.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Across every measure right now, Americans are feeling the worst they have since the 70s. So if you think about how they're looking at the economy, when they think about inflation, when they think about our future, when they think about what's going to happen for their children, everybody right now thinks we're going the wrong direction. And there's so much uncertainty. So of course they're going to start pulling back on things. A lot of people are going to stop saving as much because they have to spend so much more. When you look at almost 70% of Americans saying they're having financial hardships, whether it's because of gas prices or being able to afford rent, we've got a real issue here.
Yeah.
And so when you feel that, I think it's really interesting how that impacts what's overall going to happen here.
In other words, you force change because you feel horrible.
Yeah, you have to separate out consumer sentiment from investor sentiment. Yeah, Adam was alluding to it. Investor sentiment, the AAII bullish sentiment index, whenever it dips below 20%, stocks are higher 6 months down the road.
Okay.
It's 31 out of 31 occurrences.
Yes.
It's infallible.
And we're at about 17 right now.
Yeah, when everyone thinks alike in the stock market, everyone is likely wrong.
David, you've got the final word here, David Nicholas.
Exactly.
I was referring to the consumer sentiment index, and that is the prestigious University of Michigan sentiment, decreased 14.4% from May to June.
Well, Maria, I think you're spot on, because investor sentiment actually impacts consumer sentiment. We see it with our clients all the time. If investors look at their accounts and see that they're down 20 or 30%, that starts impacting spending. But that's what the Federal Reserve wants, right? You look at Jerome Powell, you're
that's
like,
the intent.
he seems like a nice guy. Right. I'd have a beer with him. You're like, wait a second. He's pushing for me to lose my job.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is pushing for us to double mortgage rates. The Federal Reserve is not our friend. They're the enemy. They're pushing for this. So we shouldn't be surprised.
Well, they're slamming on the brakes to try to get their arms around inflation. Keith Fitz-Gerald, David Nicholas, great to have your insights. Thanks for weighing in, gentlemen. Good word on Wall Street. Much more ahead this morning. Coming up, America's crime.
Hi, it's Keith here. Thanks for checking out today's highlight clip. What'd you think? Did I make sense? Is there something you'd like to add? Make sure you leave a comment down below, and of course, click subscribe to keep up right here on YouTube, or sign up for the email newsletter at the link below. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram for my real-time thoughts on markets, analysis, and a whole lot more.